Yo, 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 what's up, guys? Bueller and Leeland here today. We're going to talk about some trade reviews from today and also kind of just looking at just recent price action just in general. But we're going to kind of switch back and forth between entries and exits just because we both kind of took the same trade, but both different variants of it. So we're going to show both just so you get the full extent of everything. But I'm going to let Leeland start off with his entry because he did get the more optimal entry as I took a lighter position and just kind of acted accordingly. And you'll see his trade where we kind of breaks down the staircase method more than anything, having multiple contracts scaling out at multiple targets and really giving your position a bigger chance at making it to further targets, maybe. So we'll go over all that. But yeah, then you can go ahead and start it off. I'll just zoom in on today's price action.
Sure. Yeah, first thing I want to even talk about before getting to the entry is like where I even started looking for puts and where I would not be looking for puts because of how the price action formed, right? So if you actually zoom in on like the rally, just the rally area of today from open to 10:30, but actually include previous day's close. Yeah, perfect. Right there. So like puts at open, I mean, they were a good move, right? Down to the gap fill. But once we dipped below previous day close and then got bought back up over it and retested it multiple times, right there where Bueller's highlighting. At that point, I would consider puts really not valid until we had more confirmation and more information, because that's what we have been calling lately the 90% entry essentially. Like we had that dip below previous day close, then we bought back up over it. So we just needed to see a better level hit before we could see valid put entry, which you have like red candles forming at the current day open and even like at the previous high day, right? But we never really broke any structure. Like you could even draw a simple trend line there and keep you out of puts, right? We just kept making higher highs and higher lows until we got to the level Bueller has marked at the 50, 55 and the 50, 56 area. That's when we first got an actual sell that broke any sort of structure and started making lower lows. So that's really when I started looking for puts. And if you were in the live stream today, you would have seen Bueller talking about that as well as me in the chat calling for Burj Khalifa patterns. Um, and you can see Bueller has my entry already marked there at 11:04. So I didn't get in right away right when we made that low. I waited for a little bit of a pullback to form not just the lower low but also a lower high for that entry. So, yep, that was my entry where he has it marked exactly.
And yeah, I like that too because it gets up to that part, and I'll show it here on Spy in a second too. So this was like probably the most optimal entry, and I say the most optimal because, like you just finished explaining, like if you just draw your trend, you don't have to draw a real trend line if you don't want to, but it does help to just to see
Right.
it. But good
Just to
higher lows the
visualize
whole
like
time, and then it finally broke once, and then what do we get after it finally comes back up? No new highs. We don't get anything new like that. What does it do? It pulls back. So that's where he's starting to look as the first real lower high of the day. If you go to the 5 minutes, very apparent. Right here, you can
yeah.
see that. And then it starts to flush down. He trims some contracts, lets it hit some more lower highs, lets it go down to more targets, trims some more contracts, and then really just repeating that method until he sees a good retake. And I think it's cool how he broke that down right here, the retake, and how he puts aren't as attractive as they were at first, just because of the retake. And you can see the same thing kind of happening here, where you're selling into this low being made, you're trying to make it to further targets
Right.
here, and then it retakes again. It's like, well, might as well get out of that. Like, there's really no point in just like hoping or thinking he'll do anything. So no, I like that breakdown. And then here we'll show
Yeah, you gotta
the.
have
Now what's up?
you have to, I was gonna say you gotta have first things first is you gotta know your levels, which if you aren't comfortable with the levels, really you need to go back and focus on some of the main videos on the channel. But once you know your levels, then you need to know how to read the price action at those levels. Like either we're going to be breaking through and retesting, or we're going to be rejecting that level. And in this instance, like what we just talked about earlier in the morning, sure we broke through previous day close, but we didn't retest and continue further, we reclaimed it. So that breakout was essentially failed, giving buyers initial strength in the morning.
And you can see here, I'm going to pull it over to this screen. You can see it here too. A lot of times in chat, you could literally type in this number in trade floor and you'll see it was posted a few times. But just finding the right areas, right? And you can see here on SPY, because I know a lot of you guys chart SPY. Here's the previous day control point. Here's a good level in between. So you're just kind of watching both together, really, not just one or the other. I think this is the pre-market high today right here. And then previous day control point. You can see really good higher lows holding this, coming back down, just now sitting above it. And just pointing out it's a crucial area. Not saying this is going to pump, not saying this is going to dump, just saying look for higher lows, bullish candlesticks if it's going to hold above it. Look for the opposite, look for bearish candlesticks and lower highs if it ends up cracking under this. And it's just a good initial find. Like down here where he said it wasn't as attractive to get into puts again because it actually started holding good levels right here. It's the same thing right here. It's like, well, we just broke structure. Let's wait to see if we're going to hold more attractive areas to keep getting into calls. Or is this going to be where bears finally step in short term? If we don't know that we're going to break today's low, we just know at this time they can step in short term. That's just a really good example. Let's, whoops.
And ironically, now that you have the SPY chart up, it actually also lined up with the 500 psychological level. So just even more reason to avoid puts at that time.
100%.
Like we had a
100%.
little dip below 500 and then immediately bought up.
Literally 90% of the 500.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy. I'm just testing something because I'm just curious now. If you go from 500, I'm not drawing it yet, but at 500 to the top of this first impulse move, I almost bet the bottom of these red candles are holding a fib. And look at that. Holding the golden pocket. Just as a good short-term retest kind of thing. But also, that's crazy with the extensions. Look where our entries are in comparison to that one.
Wild.
But back to the video, though. So the entry that I took on SPY, showing this one because it's not as optimal, but still very optimal, so it's just good to see. But later than his, so I wanted to show both perspectives, both the, not really going to say early, but earlier than mine, and then mine. So here on the 5 minute, you can see we had a good break of the pre-market high at 502.92. We ended up getting a good shooter, hammer, inverted hammer, whatever you want to call it. It's a very nice bearish candlestick, and we know that because it has a small body, long leg above, and then we get a crackdown. We get a nice just hold under the previous day control point. I see this, and I'm like, man, this is going to give me more confidence, and now I'm finally getting in, and I have a very, very, very passive entry. With this entry, of course, if it pops over pre-market high, of course I'm out. I'm not staying in a trade in which this is probably turning into a 90% entry and then going to pump back up to 504.35. That has to be in my mind because what are we? We're in an uptrend. We're above today's open. So I have to keep in the back of my mind that if this does end up getting over this, I need to get out as quick as I can, not just beg or hope or hold this and just hope that it does fall. No, that's not going to happen. Good rejection of this. Got another hammer rejection here on the 1 minute. Got one nice move. This happened actually, and then it gave me more confidence to hold, even with this nasty pump that came right afterwards. I think I saw Eric in the chat mention how this ruined one of his runners or something, but then he got back in. Seeing this big dump actually gave me more confidence. Even if there was a big pump, I would still need to see a good confident close over previous day control point, pre-market high, and then those together, that would have definitely have been like, all right, you know what, invalid trade. This is probably going to move higher now on the chart. It did not, so that gave me even more confidence to be like, okay, well, if they have all this pump and still can't retake the levels, it has to come down. It has to retest this low. It has to break that low. Like, there's just no way. Ends up coming down, does in fact break that low. That's where I exit. It was at 501.20, 501.04 area. It was at like 11.47, I think. And if you look, it's actually a mix of where the pre-market low is and then a bigger time frame level, 501.20, which I'm pretty sure is either an emerging candle or a halfway point of emerging candles. So either way, it's pretty much the same thing. But that was my entry and exit on the trade.
Clean.
Yeah, just very, very passive. I would say this is like probably the most passive variant of this trade you can take. But it's definitely nice to look for those initial lower highs when you get a little bit more expertise like Leeland has. I mean, it's just nice to see that, yes, you can take super passive trades, but there's also other opportunities you can take with very clear risk. And I'm not saying Leland's isn't passive. His is. There's nothing wrong with
I
it.
should also mention that high that you just had your your mouse on. I mean, you can do it on SPX, it's fine. But that was my stop loss, right? The little shooting star candle.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Go
okay.
down
I'm
to,
gonna go to your chart.
okay, perfect.
So your
Just
entry was
zoom in
right
where my
here.
entry is. and then just 3 minutes before that,
Oh, that's right. You were
that
calling
high,
it.
that was my stop loss.
It was the
Yeah,
recent high because on the 5 minute I was looking at it. Yeah, yeah, and it was the recent what could have been seen as a potential lower high that just didn't have follow through yet, and then you got into it
right.
before it got the follow through, which amazing timing on that. Which now I'm
So since
curious.
that high was already set, yeah, pretty damn close. But since that high was already set on the 1 minute, I was watching that. If price were to push back up above that, that would have to me been a higher high, and that would invalidate the short essentially,
Hundred
in my
percent,
opinion.
because you definitely had some like you started seeing lower lows, but we really hadn't seen like that true lower high. Like an impulse move had not come off of this support, or had not shown up yet. Right, this was the first one, so you're right to think that like okay, if this gets over this high, then this has to be what's going to try and create this trend to continue on to 50-55, 50-56 to retest that recent high. No, that was smart. I like that because you had one side of it valid, and then you had one just kind of like starting to validate, but not entirely yet. And then you got your lower high, and I was like, all right, let's see if this actually holds. And you just took your risk. You took your risk, and if it had popped over 50, 48, 54, would have closed. Would have been a small loss. Whereas some traders
Yep,
these days, they'll
keep
take
it
the
tight.
same. They'll sometimes take the same entry as you, which is funny. They'll take entries like this too, but their stop losses are going to be up at the high of day, not at this what could have been seen as a potential lower high, right? And just because they're not thinking about the right trend and thinking about it in the right order, which you take a
Which
loss up
with
here, that would have
SPX,
hurt.
that's honestly going to kill you. Yeah.
That'd be an 80% loss,
And by
maybe
the way,
maybe
I
less.
just wanted to say quickly, the reason I entered on that candle and not necessarily the candle before or two candles before, if you mark the high from I think it's 10:45, that little red candle at 10:45.
This one.
Yeah.
Let
So
me
if you
see.
mark that at what time is
Oh,
that? 9 o'clock, we pushed above it and failed to hold. So that was my true reason for entry there.
it's also a nice percentage of
That's a
this nice
that's a
green candle
little
too.
90% entry off that level.
Damn, you're
I
such a
can't
good.
not see that
Yeah, you're
when
you're
we push
stuck
above
seeing
a
that
level
now.
and then fail it.
Pushing above it, and then most of the time creating an inside bar. This is not the case, but most of the time seeing that or a inverted hammer to some extent, and then seeing the push away
Right.
from those candles. I like that too because like the strongest candle out of this whole move up from here to here was this candle, and that what's funny too is that
And it
happens to be
failed.
like 50% of that, and then it fails that. It closes under that candle on that same candle. No, that's a very clean
Yep.
entry. So yeah, I guess today's
And then yeah,
topic
you can
was
see
just following trend. Really, I mean, reading trend correctly.
the circle he has marked there. That was my first sell. So it's not like I'm targeting
Oh yeah,
home run
let me talk
right
about
off the
that.
bat, right? Like
This was
I'm taking quick
amazing.
sells there.
Exactly. He's not. I feel like this is a great topic. Why I'm so excited is because everybody in chat, this is a great topic for them right now because there's a lot of people who are making more money in chat now, and this is making them think like, oh, I need to be making that much too. You're not making $1,000 on a drop from here to here unless you're in a insane amount of contracts, right? When Leland pushes from here to here, this is to give the rest of his position, 5 contracts total, his total position, more of a chance, higher probability, a better chance at making it to other targets without being a gambler. He's not sitting here saying, wow, I hope it goes down here so I can make 100 more percent. No, he wants to sell some because this is where the recent low was. We don't get to say where that is, right? He gets a new low.
Right.
Why would you hold all of your contracts? Doesn't make any sense. It ends up holding back up. Next thing you know, you're cutting this for 15%. So you need to trim some of your position. Do not think, guys, that you need to have 1,000 contracts up here and then sell 1,000 way down here to make money. No, if you have 5 contracts, trim some here. Guess what it did? It went down, hit the next level, trim some here, went down again, trim some here, went down again, trim some here, and do so until you ran out of levels, until you run out of contracts. You don't get to dictate how many contracts you have, how big your account size is, how far the price is going to go. What are you in control of? Scaling out of the contracts that you do own, scaling out of the contracts that you did buy. So don't sit here and
Yep.
think that you need to buy one contract at high of day and sell at low of day to make a big amount of money. Like, no, you don't. You can literally sell from here, and as it makes a new low, that should be your first initial sell point because that's where it's pushing away from. it's making its fresh new low. That's pushing your contract's price through the roof because now it has to recalculate. Okay, well, this is going to definitely go down more. How much is this? As soon as this first green
Yep.
candle appears, that calculation slows down. Your contract pricing slows down. It's going against you. That's why you need to sell as it's making a new low, like Leland did here on his first contract. And then he gave himself a chance.
Not just making that new low, but also there's the 50-40 psych level. I'm always watching psych levels.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Uh, yeah,
And yeah, you were mentioning
they
that with
just they
5K as well.
honestly truly matter
It
just because of how strike option strike prices line up with those and the way market makers like are constantly shifting around buying and selling shares with the options, like the way they manage their positions. It truly matters.
And look right here. So here's one of his cells. 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 Do you notice any patterns? It's as they're breaking new lows. I'm surprised you didn't sell one here, honestly. But
I don't
like
think I was even looking, to be
oh,
honest.
but you made up for it
But
because you
yeah,
pulled the lower high and it did continue lower. That was good. And then right here again, like made it to the next level, sold. Made it to the previous day low. Why would he hold past
right.
this? That would be so stupid, right? So now he has one contract after he sells this one. Now he can hold this all willy nilly. If it ends up going over 50-20, probably out of that. It didn't. Ends up making a new low of day. Didn't like that it did another 90% entry again. This has to be a super strong bull popping up here to some extent. This is probably going to be low of day. That's the kind of thinking we have now that we're here. Get out of that contract.
Right.
Go enjoy your day, and that's the right thinking. And yeah, sorry for all the lines, but
No worries.
good to get the thought process about. But I think that was it. Unless Leland, do you think of something else you want to talk about? We added at the end or something. So I guess this is it
I
for
think
this
that
one.
covers it.
Another thing, guys, and I probably should have recorded this one. Me and Leland were just kind of like chilling, talking about stuff. But it would have been. It's a really good thing to like follow someone's entries and exits, and then go back test them yourself. Like Leland's that person for me. Like I don't care about most charts that get posted because they're not as effective for me. Like I learn from my own methods. I learn from going through my own levels. If I don't do it myself, I don't learn it. Like if I don't do it myself, I will not remember it. If I don't do it myself, I will not memorize that same process when I want to go do it myself, right? And so it's really good to go back test your own entries and exits, as well as in my case, I like to back test Leland's because it's really nice to go look at and then compare it to mine. Be like, okay, this is what I could have done better. Okay, Leland was being a little bit more riskier than I was here. Like sometimes it's just that. It's not about someone being right or wrong. It's just maybe someone was a little bit more confident than you were at that exact moment. It's sometimes nothing to do with all that cold decision making. But what I'm trying to get at though is time frame switching. Find those entries and exits. Go mark them. Be like, okay, that's what Bueller did. This is what Leland did. Blah blah blah, and backtest them. If you've been looking at the 1 minute a lot, go look at the 1 minute. If you've been looking at the 5 minute a lot, go look at the 5 minute. If you've been looking at the 30 minute a lot, which by the way, you should be looking at this just by default, uh, and not for necessarily taking trades, but finding potential trades popping up. Because when you find a hammer at a resistance or a hammer at a support, that should get you excited. That should get you excited to go down to the smaller time frames and truly see like, all right, if we can get a lower high of that shoulder break, or if we can get a higher low of that low of day hold, then I can get a really good passive trading opportunity where I don't just have clear targets and have good confidence in myself, where you also have a clear stop loss. You don't want to take trades where it's just like, okay, guys, I'm risking high of day. You're what? You're risking high of day. Let's actually come up with the game plan. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Maybe in the future, me and Leland can do more collab recordings and stuff. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy this,
Yeah.
and we'll see you on the next one.